The great hall stretched for miles in every direction, its crystal walls reaching toward a sky that showed 1,000 different stars. Representatives from across the galaxy sat in floating chairs that moved silently through the air. Some looked like giant insects with metal parts attached to their bodies. Others appeared as clouds of gas that sparkled with tiny lights. A few resembled trees with silver bark and leaves that sang soft melodies. At the center of this massive gathering stood the Vorthak elders. They were the oldest beings anyone knew about. Their bodies looked like living crystals that changed color as they spoke. Some said they were older than the stars themselves. Others whispered they had watched entire solar systems being born. The eldest of the Vorthak stepped forward. Its crystal body pulsed with deep blue light that seemed to come from somewhere far away. When it spoke, its voice reached every corner of the hall without making any sound. Instead, the words appeared directly in the minds of all who listened. "Children of the stars," the elder began, "we have called you here because something stirs in the darkness, something that will change everything we know." A representative from the Saldrian Empire raised one of its metal arms. The Saldrians looked like walking machines covered in gold and silver. "Speak plainly, Ancient One. What threatens the order we have built?" The elder's light grew brighter. In the outer rim of this galaxy, on a small blue world orbiting a yellow star, a new species has appeared. They call themselves humans. Laughter filled the hall. It came from the Krexan warriors, massive creatures covered in black armor with glowing red eyes. Their leader stood up, his voice booming across the space. "One species, from one small world. Elder, with respect your age shows. No single race can challenge the combined might of the galaxy." The elder did not respond to the laughter. Instead, it raised what might have been an arm, and the hall fell silent. Images appeared in the air above them. They showed a blue and green planet with white clouds swirling around it. The planet looked peaceful and quiet. "Do not let their world fool you," the elder continued. "These humans possess something we have never encountered in our million years of watching. They do not understand the word impossible. When faced with a problem that cannot be solved, they solve it anyway." A representative from the Ethereal Confederation floated closer. The Ethereals looked like beings made of pure light with no solid bodies. "Surely you exaggerate, Ancient One. Every species has limitations. Every race learns to accept what cannot be changed." The elder's crystal body began to shift colors, moving from blue to deep red. "Watch and learn." New images appeared in the air. They showed humans on their planet working and building. The assembled representatives saw primitive creatures using simple tools. They saw humans fighting each other with sticks and stones. They saw them struggling to grow food and build shelters. "See how weak they appear," said a voice from the crowd. "They cannot even fly. They have no natural weapons. They live for less than 100 years. The elder waited for the voices to quiet down before continuing. "Now watch what happens when they decide they want something." The images changed. They showed humans building flying machines even though they could not fly. They showed them traveling to their moon even though space was deadly to their fragile bodies. They showed them splitting atoms even though such power could destroy their world. "Notice what they do not do," the elder said. "They do not accept their limitations. When told they cannot fly, they build wings. When told space will kill them, they build ships. When told the atom cannot be split, they split it anyway." The hall grew quieter. Some representatives leaned forward in their floating chairs. "But surely," said the Saldrian representative, "they must have learned wisdom. They must have learned when to stop." The elder's light grew dim for a moment. "That is what makes them dangerous. They never learn when to stop. When their first flying machine crashes, they build a better one. When their first spaceship explodes, they build 10 more. When their weapons become too powerful, they build even more powerful ones to protect themselves from the first ones." A new voice spoke from the crowd. It belonged to a Zephyrian, a being that looked like a tall, thin humanoid with silver skin and large black eyes. "Ancient One, forgive me, but this sounds like the behavior of children. Surely they will mature and learn the proper way of things." The elder turned to face the Zephyrian directly. "They have been this way for their entire history. When they lived in caves, they dreamed of cities. When they built cities, they dreamed of flying. When they learned to fly, they dreamed of the stars. Each impossible dream becomes their next goal. So they are ambitious," said the Krexan leader. "So are many species. Ambition can be controlled. Ambition can be defeated." The elder's light flashed bright white for just a moment. "Can it? Tell me, warrior, what happens when you defeat an enemy?" The Krexan stood straighter. They surrender or they die. And what do humans do when they are defeated? The warrior thought for a moment. They surrender? No, the elder said quietly. They learn. They study what defeated them. They find its weaknesses. They build something new to overcome it. Then they come back stronger than before. The hall fell completely silent now. The weight of the elder's words began to sink in. We have watched them for 1,000 of their years, the elder continued. In that time, they have gone from riding animals to splitting atoms. They have cured diseases that killed millions. They have built machines that think. They have looked at every problem their world offered and solved it. But they are still on their one world, pointed out an ethereal. They have not even left their own star system. The elder's crystal body began to crack slightly, small lights leaking out from the breaks. That is why we warn you now. They have just learned to leave their world. They are looking at the stars with the same eyes they once used to look at their skies. They see the galaxy not as a vast, impossible distance, but as their next problem to solve. Even if this is true, said the Saldrian representative, they are one species among thousands. The galaxy is vast. They will find their place in the proper order. The elder's light began to fade. You do not understand. There is no proper order for them. There is no place they will accept. They will look at how we have organized the galaxy for millions of years and ask one simple question. Why? And when we tell them, because this is how it has always been, they will say, let us try something different. The cracks in the elder's crystal body grew larger. They do not seek to rule you. They do not want to destroy you. They want something far more dangerous than conquest or destruction. What? Asked the crowd with one voice. They want to help you become like them. They want to share their curse of never accepting limits. They want to teach you to see every impossible thing as just another problem waiting for a solution. The elder's form began to dim and fade. We have given you this warning because in all our years of watching, we have never seen a force that could not be resisted. But these humans, they do not need to be resisted. They make resistance irrelevant by making you want to join them. The last words echoed in the minds of every being in the hall as the elder's form disappeared completely. They are coming, and nothing in this galaxy will ever be the same. The great hall erupted in debate and argument. Some dismissed the warning as the fears of a dying race. Others demanded immediate action. But in the end, they filed the report away and went back to their normal lives. After all, what could one small species really do? Captain Sarah Chen stared at the strange ships floating in space ahead of her. They looked nothing like the spacecraft humans had imagined in their stories. Instead of smooth metal surfaces, these vessels appeared to be grown rather than built. Their hulls curved and twisted like living things, covered in what looked like golden scales that reflected the light of distant stars. First contact protocols are in effect, Sarah announced to her crew aboard the exploration ship Perseverance. Remember, we represent all of humanity today. The alien ships had appeared without warning in what humans called the Wolf 359 system. Sarah's crew had been conducting a routine survey mission when their sensors detected the massive vessels. Now, 3 days later, the two groups faced each other across the empty space between planets. A voice crackled through the ship's communication system. It spoke in perfect English, though with a strange musical quality that made each word sound like it was being sung. Greetings, small ones. We are the Seldrian Trade Consortium. We welcome you to Galactic Civilization. Sarah took a deep breath before responding. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the human exploration vessel Perseverance. We are honored to meet you. Humans, the voice repeated as if tasting the word. Yes, we have heard whispers of your kind. A young species from the outer regions. We are pleased to offer you the gift of trade and knowledge. Over the next several hours, representatives from both species met aboard the largest Saldrian vessel. Sarah and her team found themselves in a room that seemed to be carved from a single piece of amber. The walls glowed with warm, golden light, and the air smelled like flowers from a dozen different worlds. The Saldrians themselves were impressive beings. They stood nearly 8 feet tall, with bodies that seemed part organic and part machine. Golden metal was woven throughout their skin like decorative threads. Their faces were elegant and beautiful, with large eyes that sparkled with intelligence and perhaps a touch of amusement. You are much as we expected, said the lead Saldrian, who introduced himself as Trademaster Velkin, small, short-lived, and eager to learn. We have dealt with many such species over the millennia. Sarah nodded politely, though something in Velkon's tone bothered her. We are indeed eager to learn. We've dreamed of this moment for generations. Velkon gestured to a floating table that appeared between them. Documents written in glowing text materialized in the air. Then let us begin with something simple. Your world possesses certain raw materials that would be useful to the greater galactic community. We offer you this standard agreement for mineral extraction rights. Sarah studied the documents carefully. Her team's translator worked quickly to convert the alien writing into something they could understand. What she read made her frown. I see, she said slowly. This agreement gives you exclusive rights to mine our asteroids and outer planets. In return, you provide us with basic technology and a small percentage of the profits. A generous offer, Velkon said with a smile that showed perfect white teeth. Most new species are thrilled to receive such an opportunity. Sarah looked at her team. Dr. Martinez, her science officer, was furiously taking notes. Engineer Kim was studying the technical specifications with growing excitement. But Commander Torres, her security chief, wore the same expression Sarah felt on her own face. Could we discuss some modifications to these terms? Sarah asked. Velkon's smile faltered slightly. Modifications? This is the standard first contact agreement. It has been used successfully for over 3,000 years. I'm sure it has, Sarah said, but we'd like to understand a few things better. For instance, what determines these profit percentages? How do you calculate the value of extracted materials? What happens if we develop our own mining technology? The room fell silent. The other Saldrians exchanged glances that seemed to say they had not expected such questions. These matters are quite complex, Velkon said carefully. Perhaps it would be better to simply trust in our experience, Sarah smiled. Oh, we absolutely want to learn from your experience. That's why we have so many questions. Could you explain your mining processes? We're particularly interested in how you handle asteroid belt extraction without disrupting orbital mechanics. What followed was not the quick signing ceremony Velkon had expected. Instead, Sarah and her team spent hours asking detailed questions about every aspect of the proposed agreement. They wanted to know about safety procedures, environmental impact, long-term resource management, and dozens of other topics the Saldrians had never discussed with a new species. Dr. Martinez pulled out a tablet and began showing the Saldrians some of humanity's own mining techniques. We've had good success with this approach on our moon, he explained. The key is to use the extracted materials to build processing stations on site, which reduces transportation costs and allows for more efficient extraction. Engineer Kim added, We've also developed some interesting techniques for asteroid capture and controlled deorbit. It's much more efficient than trying to process materials in zero gravity. The Saldrians listened with growing amazement. Most new species simply accepted whatever was offered to them. They were grateful for any contact with the greater galactic community. But these humans seem to treat the meeting like a collaboration between equals. Your methods are interesting, Velkon said finally. But surely you understand that we have thousands of years of experience in these matters. Absolutely, Sarah agreed. And we have several hundred years of experience solving problems that everyone said were impossible to solve. Maybe we can help each other. As the hours passed, something strange began to happen. The Saldrians found themselves actually interested in what the humans had to say. These creatures had developed solutions to problems that the galactic community had simply accepted as unavoidable. Their mining techniques were crude but remarkably efficient. Their safety procedures were paranoid but effective. By the end of the first day, Velkon realized that the standard agreement would not work with these humans. They asked too many questions, suggested too many alternatives, and somehow made every simple statement into a complex discussion. Perhaps, he said finally, we should draft a more comprehensive agreement, one that takes into account your unique perspective. Sarah's smile was bright and enthusiastic. That sounds wonderful. We've actually prepared some preliminary ideas. Commander Torres produced a data pad containing several dozen pages of notes and suggestions. We've organized our thoughts into categories: resource extraction, technology sharing, safety protocols, environmental protection, profit distribution, dispute resolution, and future expansion opportunities. Velkon stared at the document in disbelief. You prepared all this since yesterday? Oh, this is just our initial thoughts, Dr. Martinez said cheerfully. We're still working on the detailed technical specifications. We should have those ready in a few days. What the Saldrians had expected to be a simple half-day ceremony stretched into weeks of negotiations. The humans approached every clause, every term, every definition with the same methodical thoroughness they applied to everything else. They wanted to understand not just what they were agreeing to, but why things were done that way and whether there might be better alternatives. More surprising still, many of their suggestions actually were better. Their proposed safety protocols were more comprehensive than anything the Saldrians used. Their resource management techniques were more sustainable. Their dispute resolution procedures were more fair. By the time the final agreement was signed, it looked nothing like the standard First Contact Treaty. Instead, it was a complex partnership agreement that treated humans as equals rather than junior partners. The Saldrians found themselves wondering how a species they had never heard of had managed to completely rewrite thousands of years of established practice. "This has been most educational," Velkon told Sarah as they prepared to part ways. "For us too," Sarah replied. "We're looking forward to working with you. Oh, and we've been thinking about some improvements to your ship designs. Would you like to hear about them?" As the human ship departed, Velkon stood at his observation window and watched it disappear into the darkness. Something told him that this first contact had been different from all the others. These humans did not seem content to simply accept their place in the galactic order. Instead, they seemed determined to improve it. A week later, Velkon received a message from the human ship. They had successfully tested 3 of the mining techniques discussed during negotiations and wanted to share the results. Attached were detailed technical specifications, safety reports, and suggestions for further improvements. For the first time in his long life, Velkon found himself excited about a trade partnership. These humans might be young and inexperienced, but they brought something new to the galaxy, the absolute certainty that everything could be done better. He began drafting a report to the Saldrian High Council. Somehow, he suspected they were going to be hearing a lot more about humanity in the coming years. The Ethereal Confederation's testing facility floated in the void between 2 dying stars. It had been built over 10,000 years ago to challenge the greatest minds in the galaxy. The structure itself defied easy description, part laboratory, part temple, part machine that seemed to think for itself. Ambassador Larina of the Ethereals watched as the human delegation approached in their simple, boxy spacecraft. The humans had been invited to attempt the Great Filter, a series of tests that determined which species were ready to join the galaxy's most advanced civilizations. In all the millennia since its creation, only 7 species had successfully completed every challenge. "Are you certain about this?" asked Research Master Thane, his form flickering between solid matter and pure energy. "The humans have been part of galactic society for barely a decade. Most species take centuries to develop the necessary understanding." Larina's laugh sounded like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. They requested the test themselves. Apparently they heard about it from a Saldrian trader and immediately wanted to try it. Their exact words were, "That sounds like fun." The human team consisted of 5 individuals, each representing a different area of expertise. Dr. Elena Martinez led the group, her graying hair and bright eyes giving her an appearance of controlled enthusiasm. Behind her came Engineer David Kim, whose hands never stopped moving as he examined every surface and device around him. Dr. James Wright specialized in physics, Dr. Sarah Okafor in biology, and Dr. Michael Zhang in what humans called computational theory. "Welcome to the filter," Larina announced as the humans entered the main testing chamber. "You're about to face challenges that have stumped the greatest minds our galaxy has produced. Each test represents a fundamental barrier that every truly advanced species must overcome." Dr. Martinez nodded eagerly. "We're excited to try. Where do we start?" The first test materialized around them. They stood in a room filled with complex machinery and holographic displays showing impossible mathematical equations. The challenge was simple to state but nearly impossible to solve. Create a method of faster-than-light communication that did not rely on quantum entanglement. This problem has been presented to over 300 species, Thane explained. The current galactic communication network represents the absolute limit of what is possible within known physics. The humans immediately spread out across the room, each examining different aspects of the challenge. Dr. Wright stared at the mathematical displays, occasionally muttering things like "interesting" and "that's not right." Dr. Martinez began sketching diagrams on a tablet she had brought with her. The math assumes space-time is fixed, Dr. Zhang announced after an hour of study. Of course it does, Thane replied. Space-time is the fundamental framework of reality. Dr. Zhang looked up from his calculations with a puzzled expression. Says who? The question hung in the air like a physical presence. In 10,000 years, no species had ever asked it. What if we don't send information through space-time? Engineer Kim suggested, looking up from a device he was building with parts he had somehow found in the testing chamber. What if we send it around space-time? Dr. Okafor nodded enthusiastically. Like poking a hole in a piece of paper and passing a thread through it instead of running the thread along the surface. You cannot simply poke holes in space-time, Lorena protested. The energy requirements would be enormous. Dr. Martinez looked up from her sketches. What if we don't need enormous energy? What if we just need very precise energy applied in exactly the right way? What followed was 6 hours of the most intensive scientific discussion the ethereals had ever witnessed. The humans did not approach the problem like previous species, seeking to work within the established limits of physics. Instead, they treated physics like a set of suggestions that could be improved upon. Dr. Wright filled 3 whiteboards with equations that described space-time as a flexible medium rather than a fixed framework. Dr. Zhang developed algorithms that could calculate the exact energy patterns needed to create what he called micro-wormholes. Engineer Kim built a prototype device that could, in theory, generate those patterns. This is impossible, Thane whispered to Lorena. They are treating fundamental constants as variables. It gets worse, Lorena replied, watching Dr. Okafor explain how biological neural networks could be used to control the micro-wormholes with organic precision. They are not just solving the problem. They are redefining what the problem means. By the end of the day, the humans had created a working prototype. It was crude and limited, but it successfully transmitted a simple message across the testing chamber without using any known method of communication. They had not found a way around the limits of physics. They had convinced physics to change its limits. The second test involved energy conversion. The challenge was to achieve energy-to-matter conversion ratios that exceeded 97% efficiency. The galactic record stood at 83%, achieved by the Vorthak elders after millions of years of research. The humans examined the testing equipment for 30 minutes before Dr. Kim started taking it apart. What are you doing? Thane demanded. Improving it, Kim replied matter-of-factly. This design wastes energy by fighting quantum uncertainty instead of using it. Quantum uncertainty cannot be used, Lorena explained patiently. It is random, chaotic, unpredictable. Dr. Zhang looked up from his tablet where he was running complex simulations. Random to what? Chaotic by whose standards? Unpredictable by which methods? Dr. Wright began drawing new equations that treated quantum uncertainty not as a barrier to overcome, but as a resource to be harvested. Dr. Okafor suggested using biological processes as templates for quantum manipulation, since life had been successfully managing quantum effects for billions of years. You are treating reality like software that can be reprogrammed, Thane observed with growing alarm. Dr. Martinez paused in her work to consider this. Isn't it? I mean, if the universe runs on consistent rules, then those rules can be understood, modified, and improved, right? The humans completed the second test with an efficiency rating of 99.7%. When asked how they had achieved this, Dr. Kim shrugged and said, "We convinced the quantum fields to cooperate instead of compete." The third test was considered the most impossible of all. The challenge was to create a stable micro-singularity that could be used for controlled gravity manipulation. Every previous attempt had resulted in either immediate collapse or uncontrolled expansion. The humans spent 2 hours not working on the problem, but arguing about whether it was the right problem to solve. Why do we need to create a singularity? Dr. Okafor asked. Why not convince spacetime to behave like there's a singularity present? Because spacetime does not take suggestions, Lorena replied with strained patience. Dr. Wright looked up from his calculations. Have you tried asking nicely? The question was so absurd that nobody bothered to answer it. But over the next several hours, the humans developed a method that was essentially equivalent to asking spacetime nicely. They created a field effect that convinced local spacetime geometry that a singularity was present. without actually creating one. The technique worked perfectly. It was also completely impossible according to every known law of physics. How? Thane demanded. How did you convince space-time to lie to itself? Dr. Zhang smiled. We didn't convince it to lie. We convinced it to tell a better truth. By the end of the third day, word of the humans' progress had spread throughout the facility. Representatives from dozens of species arrived to observe the final tests. What they saw challenged everything they understood about the nature of reality and possibility. The humans did not solve problems the way other species solved problems. They did not work within existing frameworks or accept established limitations. Instead, they treated every impossibility as a design flaw in the universe that could be corrected with sufficient creativity and persistence. They do not just think outside the box, one observer noted. They do not acknowledge that the box exists. The final test was presented on the fourth day. It was a simple question that had never been answered. Create something that has never existed before. The humans looked at each other and smiled. That's easy, Dr. Martinez said. We've been doing that all week. She gestured to the devices they had built, the equations they had written, the techniques they had developed. In 4 days, they had created 6 entirely new fields of science and technology. They had not just passed the Great Filter, they had rebuilt it into something better. As the human delegation prepared to leave, Lorena approached Dr. Martinez with a question that had been troubling her. How do you do it? How do you look at the impossible and see only another problem to solve? Dr. Martinez considered the question seriously. I think it's because we don't see things as impossible. We see them as things nobody has figured out how to do yet. And if nobody has figured it out yet, that just means we get to be the first. The Ethereal Confederation's report on the human tests became one of the most widely read documents in galactic history. It concluded with a single troubling observation. The humans do not seek to master the universe. They seek to improve it, and they appear to be succeeding. The War Council met in the darkest reaches of space, far from any star or planet where their gathering might be observed. 6 of the galaxy's most powerful civilizations had come together for the first time in recorded history, not to plan conquest or expansion, but to discuss a single, terrifying problem: humanity. Supreme Commander Vextar of the Krexian Empire stood at the center of the massive war room, his black armor gleaming under the harsh lights. Around him, representatives of the other great powers studied holographic displays showing human activities throughout the galaxy. In 20 years, Vextar began, his voice echoing through his helmet's speakers. They have spread to over 300 systems, not through conquest or colonization, but through what they call cooperation and mutual benefit. Trademaster Velkon of the Saldrians nodded grimly. Every species they encounter becomes different, more questioning, more innovative. They ask why things are done certain ways and whether there might be better methods. Ambassador Lyrina of the Ethereals flickered between her solid and energy forms as she spoke. They have completed our Great Filter tests not just once but 17 times, with different teams achieving better results each attempt. They treat our most sacred challenges like training exercises. Worse, added Hive Mind Collective Node 7 of the Zephyrian Confederation, they share everything they learn. Every breakthrough, every innovation, every impossible solution, they teach it to anyone who asks. The 6th member of the council, Shadow Singer Neth of the Voidwalkers, spoke from within a cloud of dark energy. Our agents report that human universities now exist on 47 worlds. They are teaching other species to think like humans. Vextar studied the data displays with growing alarm. Show me the threat assessment. New images appeared in the air above them. They showed human ships that seemed to rebuild themselves during flight. Human colonies that terraformed planets in decades instead of centuries. Human research stations that routinely violated the known laws of physics. Their technology advances faster than we can track, Velkon reported. By the time our intelligence services analyze one innovation, they have developed 3 more. But surely, Lyrina suggested, they must have limits. Every species has boundaries beyond which they cannot go. Node 7's multiple voices spoke in harmony. We have been monitoring human academic discussions. Last week, a group of their students debated whether it might be possible to create new dimensions. They were not discussing theory, they were planning experiments. The council fell silent as the implications sank in. They must be stopped, Vextar declared. Whatever they are, whatever they represent, they cannot be allowed to continue spreading their influence. Shadow Singer Neth's dark form pulsed with agreement. The Voidwalkers concur. We have observed species that interacted with humans beginning to question fundamental aspects of reality itself. This is not progress. It is chaos. Over the following weeks, the greatest military alliance in galactic history took shape. The combined fleets of 6 civilizations, representing over 10,000 years of accumulated military experience, prepared for what they called the Correction War. The attack came without warning on a Tuesday morning, Earth Standard Time. Massive fleets appeared in 67 human systems simultaneously. The alien forces expected swift victory over a species that had been spacefaring for less than 50 years. What they found, instead, was a puzzle that redefined their understanding of warfare. Commander Alex Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the defense station Luna Prime, watching the enemy fleets approach Earth's outer defense perimeter. The attacking force was larger than anything humanity had ever faced, over 3,000 ships of designs that seemed to blend impossible beauty with terrifying destructive power. "Sir," reported Communications Officer Chen, "we're receiving surrender demands from the Krexen flagship. They want us to submit to corrective measures for the good of galactic stability." Rodriguez studied the tactical displays showing the massive alien formation. Any reasonable military analysis would conclude that humanity's chances were approximately 0. The enemy had superior numbers, superior technology, and thousands of years of combat experience. "Send a reply," Rodriguez said calmly. "Tell them we appreciate the offer, but we'll have to respectfully decline." "Sir?" Chen looked puzzled. "Should I suggest negotiations instead?" Rodriguez smiled, the expression carrying a mixture of determination and something that might have been amusement. "Negotiations are what you do when you might lose. We're going to win this fight." The first engagement took place near Jupiter's moons, human ships that looked crude and primitive, compared to the elegant alien vessels closed with enemy forces in formations that made no tactical sense. Instead of trying to match the superior firepower of their opponents, human captains did something unexpected. They improvised. Captain Sarah Martinez of the destroyer Perseverance faced off against a Krexen battlecruiser 3 times her ship's size. When her conventional weapons proved ineffective against the enemy's shields, she ordered her engineering team to modify the ship's engines to create a localized space-time distortion. "Captain," her chief engineer reported, "this modification has never been tested. It might tear the ship apart." "Then we'll know it doesn't work," Martinez replied. "But if it does work, we'll know something new about space-time manipulation." The improvised weapon created a bubble of twisted space-time around the Krexen ship, causing its own weapons to fire backwards into its hull. The alien vessel, designed to withstand external attacks, was destroyed by its own guns. Similar scenes played out across the solar system. Human forces that should have been overwhelmed began achieving impossible victories through tactics that had never been tried before, because no sane species would attempt them. Engineer First Class David Kim, working frantically in the engine room of the cruiser New Horizons, received an order that epitomized the human approach to warfare. "We need our shields to work backwards." "Backwards how, sir?" Kim asked over the intercom. "Instead of keeping energy out, we need them to keep enemy ships in. Can you invert the field polarity without blowing up the ship?" Kim considered this for exactly 3 seconds. "Unknown, sir." "Want me to try it?" "Do it." 5 minutes later, the New Horizons successfully trapped an entire squadron of ethereal fighters in an inescapable energy bubble. The alien pilots found themselves caught in a shield system that had been redesigned during active combat. Word of these impossible victories spread through the alien alliance like a virus of disbelief. Their carefully planned attack was being defeated by enemies who treated warfare like a science experiment with lethal consequences. Supreme Commander Vextar watched from his flagship as human reinforcements began arriving through what appeared to be holes torn in space itself. "How are they opening dimensional portals?" "That technology requires centuries of development." His tactical officer's voice carried the strain of repeated impossible observations. "Sir, our intelligence suggests they invented it last week. A human university published the theoretical framework on Monday. By Friday, they had working prototypes. That's impossible." "Yes, sir. The humans appear to specialize in impossible things." The turning point came when human forces began adapting alien weapons in real time. Ships that were damaged by enemy fire emerged from battle with those same weapons integrated into their own systems. Human engineers somehow managed to reverse engineer and improve upon technology that had taken other species millennia to develop. Dr. Elena Martinez, now serving as Chief Science Advisor to the human fleet, broadcast a message that was intercepted by all alien forces. To our galactic neighbors currently trying to destroy us, we're not angry, just disappointed. We thought we were building friendships and partnerships. Instead, you've given us the greatest learning opportunity in human history. Thank you for the advanced technology samples. We're already putting them to good use. The message was accompanied by footage of human shipyards where captured alien vessels were being dismantled, studied and rebuilt into hybrid designs that combined the best features of multiple civilizations' technology. They are not just winning, Shadow Singer, Neth reported to the council with something approaching panic in his voice. They are improving. Every battle makes them stronger, smarter, more dangerous. The final blow to alien morale came when human forces began arriving in enemy home systems, not to attack or conquer, but to offer humanitarian aid to civilian populations caught in the crossfire of their own government's war. Human medical ships appeared in Krexin space carrying supplies and doctors. Human engineers offered to repair damaged infrastructure on Saldrian colonies. Human teachers arrived at ethereal research stations with offers to share newly developed technologies. They are not trying to defeat us, Lorena realized with growing horror. They are trying to help us. The surrender came not through military defeat, but through the gradual realization that humanity was fighting an entirely different war than the one their enemies had declared. While the Galactic Alliance sought to destroy or contain human influence, humans were working to understand and improve their attackers. The peace treaty was negotiated not by diplomats or military leaders, but by human professors and alien scientists who discovered they had more in common with each other than with their own governments. Commander R. 5 years after the war ended, the galaxy looked nothing like the ordered, stable civilization that had existed for millennia. Where once there had been rigid hierarchies and unchanging traditions, now there was constant change, endless innovation, and a sense that anything might be possible. Dr. Elena Martinez walked through the halls of New Geneva Station, humanity's first truly intergalactic research facility. The station itself was a marvel of cooperative engineering, built using techniques developed by 17 different species working together. Its corridors curved and twisted through dimensions that had not existed before human mathematicians proved they could be created. As head of the Galactic Advancement Initiative, Elena oversaw research projects that would have been considered pure fantasy just a decade earlier. Today's agenda included a meeting with a team of Krexin warriors who were developing new forms of poetry, a discussion with ethereal philosophers about the practical applications of impossible mathematics, and a review of the latest proposal from the Saldrian Human Joint Engineering Project. Her first stop was the Dimensional Physics Laboratory, where Dr. Sarah Okafor was working with a mixed team of researchers from 6 different species. They stood around a device that hummed with energy contained in a space that was somehow both incredibly vast and impossibly small. "How's the Reality Anchor project coming along?" Elena asked. Dr. Okafor looked up from her calculations with the expression of someone who had just solved a puzzle that had been bothering her for weeks. "Better than expected. We've successfully created a stable pocket dimension that's bigger on the inside than the outside. The ethereals contributed the theoretical framework, the Krexin provided the structural engineering, and the Saldrians developed the energy management systems." "And the human contribution?" Elena asked. "We asked why it had to be so complicated," replied Dr. Kim, who was adjusting controls on a device that looked like it had been built from spare parts and wishful thinking. Turns out most of the complexity came from everyone assuming it was supposed to be complicated. Elena nodded and made a note on her tablet. This was typical of how joint research projects worked now. Each species contributed their particular strengths, but humans consistently provided the element that made everything else work: the absolute refusal to accept that things had to be difficult. Her next stop was the Cultural Exchange Center, where former Supreme Commander Vextar of the Krexin Empire was teaching a class on military history to a group of human students. The massive warrior had traded his black armor for simple robes, though he still moved with the precise discipline of a lifetime soldier. The key to understanding traditional Krexan tactics, Vextar was explaining, is to remember that we valued honor above efficiency. We fought the way our ancestors fought because that was the right way to fight. A human student raised her hand. But what if there was a better way that was also honorable? Vextar paused, his expression thoughtful. For 10,000 years, no one asked that question. We assumed that tradition and innovation were opposites. Humans taught us that tradition could be a foundation for innovation rather than a barrier to it. Elena smiled as she listened. The transformation in Vextar had been remarkable to watch. The warrior who had once sought to destroy humanity now served as one of their most passionate advocates for change and growth. In the next corridor, she encountered a group of children from multiple species playing what appeared to be an elaborate game involving floating blocks, holographic displays, and mathematical equations that shifted and changed in response to the children's actions. "What are you building?" Elena asked a young Zephyrian whose silver skin sparkled with excitement. "A new kind of engine," the child replied as if this was the most natural thing in the world. "It will make spaceships go faster by convincing space to be smaller," a human child added. "And we're making it pretty too. Because Teacher Martinez says there's no reason functional things can't be beautiful." Elena watched the children work together, sharing ideas and building on each other's concepts without any of the species barriers that had once seemed insurmountable. They treated the impossible like a puzzle to be solved and the universe like a toy that could be improved with sufficient creativity. Her final meeting of the day was with the Galactic Council, which now met in a room that existed in 17 dimensions simultaneously. The representatives could see and hear each other clearly, but each experienced the meeting in ways that suited their species' particular sensory and cognitive capabilities. "The quarterly report shows remarkable progress," announced Council Coordinator Larina, her ethereal form shifting between energy and matter as she spoke. "The joint terraforming project has successfully created 3 new garden worlds. The Dimensional Engineering Initiative has opened safe passage routes that reduce travel time between systems by 60%, and the Universal Education Program now operates in over 800 systems." Trademaster Velkon, who had become one of humanity's strongest supporters, added his own observations. "The economic impact has been extraordinary. By sharing technologies and techniques freely, we have increased galactic productivity by over 300%. The old model of scarcity and competition has been replaced by abundance and cooperation. But the most significant change," added Node 7 of the Zephyrian Confederation, "is not technological or economic. It is philosophical. Across the galaxy, species are beginning to think like humans." Elena leaned forward with interest. "What do you mean?" "They ask questions that were never asked before," Node 7 explained. "They see problems where we saw accepted facts. They assume that everything can be improved, that every limitation can be overcome, that every impossibility is just a temporary inconvenience." Shadow Singer Neth, whose dark energy form had somehow learned to express amusement, added, "My own people, who spent millions of years perfecting the art of moving through darkness, now routinely create new forms of light just to see what happens. They have become curious about brightness." As the meeting continued, Elena found herself thinking about the Vorthak elders and their ancient warning. They had been right about humanity's impact on the galaxy, but they had not understood the full implications of their own prophecy. After the council session ended, Elena made her way to the station's observation deck. Through the transparent walls, she could see ships from dozens of species docking and departing. Some were familiar designs, but many were entirely new creations that combined technologies and aesthetics from multiple civilizations. She was joined by Dr. Martinez, her old colleague from the first human contact missions. "Tired?" Sarah asked, settling into a chair that adjusted itself to her preferred configuration. "Energized," Elena replied. "Look at what we've accomplished in just 5 years. The galaxy is transforming faster than anyone thought possible." Sarah nodded, watching a group of mixed-species engineers working on what appeared to be a new type of starship that existed partially in normal space and partially in dimensions. They had created specifically for the purpose. "Sometimes I wonder what the elders would think if they could see this," Sarah mused, as if summoned by her words. A familiar crystalline form materialized near them. It was smaller and dimmer than the ancient elders they remembered, but unmistakably Vorthak. "We do see it," the being said, its voice carrying the weight of eons. "And we are amazed." Elena stood up, startled. "I thought the elders had all passed beyond physical existence." "Most have," the Vorthak replied. "But a few of us chose to remain, to witness the fulfillment of our prophecy. I am the last of my kind, and I have lived to see something I never expected." "What's that?" Sarah asked. The ancient being's crystal form pulsed with what might have been joy. "We warned the galaxy that humans could not be resisted. We were correct, but we misunderstood what resistance meant. We thought it meant opposition, conflict, the imposition of will through force." The elder paused, its light growing brighter. "Instead, humans made resistance irrelevant by making everyone want to be like them. They did not conquer the galaxy, they inspired it. They did not break down barriers, they convinced everyone to remove them voluntarily." Elena looked out at the bustling station around them, where beings from hundreds of worlds worked together on projects that would have been impossible for any single species to accomplish. "What happens now?" she asked. The Vorthak elder began to fade, its ancient energy finally reaching its end. "Now, child of Earth, you discover what lies beyond the boundaries of this galaxy. And when you encounter the greater universe beyond, you will ask the same question you have always asked." "Which is?" The elder's final words echoed in their minds as its form dissolved into sparkles of light. "Why not?" Years later, Elena would remember this conversation as she stood on the bridge of humanity's first intergalactic exploration vessel. Around her, representatives from 200 species prepared to leave their home galaxy and venture into the vast unknown beyond. They carried with them not weapons or conquest plans, but gifts: the gift of curiosity, the gift of persistence, and most dangerous,